Welcome to this edition of AFMC.
I'll tell you how I got better. I'm
Glad to be here.
But a mission to
Delivery of. Well, I think that we're going to talk about everybody's.
Arkansas is the second highest prescriber.
Welcome to this episode of AFMC TV. I'm Robin Ledbetter. Thank you for joining us. Today I have with me Dr. Misty Virmani. Thanks so much, Dr. Virmani, for being here.
Thanks for inviting me.
And you are the Executive Medical Director of the Arkansas Milk Bank.
Yes, ma'am.
A neonatologist at UAMS and Associate Professor of Pediatrics.
Yes, ma'am.
So overly qualified to talk to us about the Milk Bank today. Tell us what the Milk Bank is.
The Milk Bank is an institution that we have just recently opened. It accepts milk from moms who are healthy out in the state, who have been breastfeeding their own babies, usually after a couple of months of having been home with their baby. They have extra milk and they want to give it out of their goodness of the heart to be able to make safe feedings for babies who are hospitalized in NICUs around the state.
And what is the mission specifically for the Milk Bank?
Our mission is primarily to support and promote breastfeeding amongst all the mothers and infants around Arkansas, but to use that milk to make safe donor milk feedings for babies who can't get their own mother's milk while they're hospitalized.
And how does that process work? Can anyone donate?
Well, anyone can, but we put them through a pretty stringent screening process to make sure that the milk that we're providing to the babies is as safe as we can make it. So we screen them for a wide variety of infectious concerns, medication history, past history of things that might put them at risk, like cancer, or social factors that might put them at risk for transmissible diseases like hepatitis or HIV. And then we also get information from their physician so that we're confirming that information that they shared with us. And we send them for blood tests to make sure that from an infectious disease standpoint, we've screened them thoroughly.
And thoroughly screened means safe milk for anyone
Yes.
that gets received a donation.
Yes.
And how is this supported? Is it through the legislature, through the
Yep.
state? How does that work?
So the legislature passed a special fund within the UAMS appropriations bill to fund and develop the milk bank. And so it was through some of our legislators who are wonderful advocates for women and infants' health in the state that promoted it, and it passed unanimously in both the House and the Senate, and has widespread support amongst our legislature. And UAMS was happy to help facilitate and kind of be the administrator of the milk bank.
So tell me a little bit about the importance of breastfeeding. We hear about it a lot, but why is it really important?
We do talk about it a lot. Breastfeeding, a lot of what you hear in the literature and in the media is that breastfeeding is important for babies' health, and it absolutely is. As a neonatologist, I treat mother's own milk as like it's a medication. It's that important to the preterm infants that I take care of. For a premature infant, getting fed mom's own milk helps reduce their risk of problems like necrotizing enterocolitis, which can be a devastating bowel injury that can cause loss of portions of their bowel, and for some infants it can cause them to die. It also helps prevent things like bronchopulmonary dysplasia, or that chronic lung disease of prematurity that means that some of those infants go home on oxygen, or even the sicker ones go home on ventilators. Blindness, retinopathy of prematurity can be improved by feeding more of mom's milk, and sepsis and death are both reduced by feeding mom's own milk. So it's very important for NICU babies, but it's important for healthy babies who go home with their moms after delivery as well. It reduces the risk of sudden infant death if a mom breastfeeds for the first 6 months of life, not even exclusively if she's just still breastfeeding at 6 months. It can reduce the child's risk of sudden infant death by a little over 50%. And for our state, that's incredibly important. We have an unfortunately very high infant mortality rate, and a large amount of that is attributable to sudden infant death. There are other benefits, things like reducing the risk of developing leukemia. Babies who are breastfed more have fewer infections, fewer hospitalizations, fewer sick visits with their doctor and prescriptions. Things like less ear infections and less stomach infections that cause diarrhea and vomiting. So overall, a healthier baby population, and it sets them up to grow into childhood as healthier children and then healthier adults. Breastfeeding has even recently been shown for children who are breastfed to reduce the risk of things like juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis going into adulthood. And those are things that we're hearing a lot more about in the media, particularly from pharmaceutical companies who are making new medications to help combat that. One of the ways that we can help parents help their babies and children be healthier as adults is to encourage them and support them in breastfeeding.
Well, tell me a little bit about how the milk bank helps NICUs. So you serve several NICUs across the state?
We plan to serve all of the NICUs in the state. So our goal is to have enough milk coming in to process that we can supply any NICU in the state or any nursery in the state who uses donor human milk to feed infants with what they need.
And is there a cost?
Absolutely. Sadly, there's a cost to everything. So right now, all of the NICUs that are around the state buy their donor milk outside of the state. So there are, I think, 31, maybe 32 other Human Milk Bank Association milk banks in the North American region. For instance, there's one in North Texas, there's one in Oklahoma, Michigan, Indianapolis, Illinois. And we currently get our milk, our donor milk that we use in our NICUs from a variety of those sources, but we pay to buy the milk from them. And it's really not what we would call selling the milk, it's recouping the cost of production. So they're all non-for-profit, but we do have to pay our employees to make it and to freeze it and to process it and buy the equipment. And then we ship it to those hospitals around the country. So currently Arkansas spends almost $2 million buying donor milk for their premature infants outside of the state. Our hope is that while we may not be saving those hospitals money per se, we're keeping that money in state, but we're also keeping the milk from moms who are donating in our state.
And so this could potentially alleviate costs for Arkansas.
Potentially, it may not be a vast difference. We charge for kind of overhead for processing the milk and all the equipment and supplies that are needed, just to help balance that out. All of our Havana milk banks are not-for-profit. There will be some hospitals that experience potentially lower shipping fees because we ship it frozen and track it through its shipping process. But the benefit is that the milk and the money that goes to pay for the milk stays in state.
And does an environmental background matter when it comes to breast milk?
It does. So every mom makes different breast milk. This is not like formula where every bottle you pick up off the shelf is exactly the same. Even within one mom, her milk changes over the course of the day based on her diet. It changes over the course of her lactation period. So every mom her milk is uniquely kind of developed to help her specific baby. Her environment plays a role in that, her diet, and her genetic history plays a big role in that. So one of the things that is being postulated in the literature and in the research, but we think that makes a lot of physiologic sense, is that the components of the milk that are genetically predetermined or are environmentally determined make a difference to babies from that same genetic pool or from that same environment. Because those components that have immunologic effect are impacting their growth and development in a beneficial way. So what we would like to see happen is that instead of getting milk from mothers in Michigan or in Illinois, our babies in our NICUs in Arkansas are getting milk from mothers who are in Arkansas in the same kind of general genetic pool, but also environmental pool and social cultural pool. Diets are largely the same across populations. So, all of those things we think are probably going to have a beneficial impact on our babies' outcomes.
So interesting. So what is the next stage of development for this?
So right now we have opened the milk bank. We are recruiting donors and putting them through the screening process. A few of them have graciously given us their milk, and so we are storing that until we have enough to start processing. We are training our staff. We also have some research milk. So every drop of milk that we get into the milk bank is used in some way to help us make sure that either the product we make is safe or that we have our procedures correct. So the research milk that we have, we're using to train and to test and to run through our processes to make sure that they happen seamlessly and that there's no errors in there that might affect the long-term health of an infant who was being fed milk later on. So our next phase of development is that we want to, in order to meet our mission to better support breastfeeding women in the state, we want to open a lactation center. We want to have a 5-day-a-week breastfeeding lactation center so that a mom can come in and, even if she's not donating to the milk bank, get a visit, get an appointment with a IBCLC who is trained to help her through the process of lactation and address any barriers or problems that she might be facing. We're also developing an education center so that we can focus on education for not only community members, mothers, families, other people in the parenting community, but also for healthcare providers to teach residents and medical students, nursing staff, anybody who wants to come through and learn. And we're partnering with some of our Department of Health colleagues in that effort as well.
So many resources, not just for the mother, but for the healthcare provider too.
Yep.
So interesting. And is this just for Arkansans? Are you wanting just women from Arkansas to come in and donate?
Well, if there's a mom in Texas or Oklahoma and she wants to send her milk to Arkansas, we would love to have it. We also, Oklahoma and North Texas both have milk banks of their own, so they tend to recruit donors from their population. And now that the milk banking community has grown quite a bit in the last decade or so, there's a lot more opportunities locally for moms to be able to give back to their own communities. So I don't see that happening as much unless there's states that are just underserved and underdeveloped.
And you talked a little bit about this earlier, but there's a lot of ongoing health benefits for the mother after they stop breastfeeding.
Absolutely. It lasts throughout the rest of their life. So, one of the biggest killers of mothers, aside from the immediate postpartum period, is having cancers, particularly female reproductive cancers, outside of things like lung cancer, which wouldn't have anything necessarily to do with breastfeeding. But ovarian, breast, and uterine cancer cause a lot of deaths. But so do heart attacks and strokes. And those are some of the big things that breastfeeding can beneficially impact. So a mom who breastfeeds longer has a lower chance of having a heart attack before age 65, has a lower chance of having a stroke, and has less chance of developing breast cancer, ovarian cancer, and uterine cancer. And the longer she breastfeeds, the bigger that effect is. So one of the things that I've found kind of most impressive is that if a Black woman breastfeeds for 13 months, over the course of her lifetime, it's not 13 months with each child, it's just a total of 13 months. She can potentially reduce her risk of having a stroke before age 65 by a little over 60%. And that's just jaw-dropping. It's astounding because stroke in Black women is a huge killer, particularly in Arkansas. And this has major health care ramifications to encourage and support all women in breastfeeding, but particularly trying to address some of the inequities that exist in our healthcare industry.
And what do you want the healthcare community to know about this?
It's important for a breastfeeding woman, a pregnant woman, or a pre-pregnant woman to hear from her care provider, from every single one of them, that breastfeeding is important to her long-term health. So even if she's not pregnant or she's there talking to you about, I want to get pregnant in the next couple of years, take a moment, 2 minutes out of that time to say, have you thought about breastfeeding? You have a family history of breast cancer, or you have a family history of stroke and heart attack and diabetes. This can help you not go down that same path. The more doctors who say it, the more healthcare professionals who say it to women, the louder that voice gets. And sadly, there's a lot that we need to do within our society, within our communities to better support breastfeeding, but I really think that the change has to happen within the healthcare industry, within us first, before we're going to see a change on a societal level. But the more we build that up and create that supportive structure, teach people how to manage the breastfeeding problems that exist, teach them when a mom comes in and says that she's having pain or that she's got difficulty with latch, to know what resource to send her to, the better we're going to do and the healthier our population's going to get. And that only benefits us as a society to be healthier.
Well, Dr. Virmani, thank you so much for this information and for all you do with the milk bank. I have learned so much today in the benefits of breastfeeding for both the baby and the mother and our community to make Arkansas a better place. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
And that's it for this episode of AFMC TV. Have a great day, and thanks for watching.